There's a strange kind of exhaustion that almost no one can explain. You wake up. You check your phone before your feet even touch the floor. You open 17 tabs before 9 a.m. You answer emails, you jump into calls, you scroll for just 2 minutes, and somehow, by the time the sun goes down, you're completely drained, but you can't point to a single thing you actually built, created, or solved. You were busy all day. But you weren't valuable all day. And here's the part that should terrify you: this isn't an accident. It isn't a personal failure. It is the designed outcome of the world you live in. Every app on your phone, every notification, every quick message, every open tab, they are not competing for your time. They are competing for something far more expensive. They are competing for your attention. And attention, it turns out, is the raw material every meaningful achievement in your life is built from. Here's the paradox nobody tells you: in an economy that has never demanded more complex thinking, we have somehow built a culture that makes complex thinking nearly impossible. We've optimized every tool in our lives for interruption, and then we wonder why we feel like we're sprinting in place. Most people fail, not because they lack talent, not because they lack ambition, but because they've never learned the single skill that separates those who create extraordinary value from those who simply stay busy. They don't understand depth, and without it, no amount of hustle will ever be enough. This is the story of that skill. And by the end, you won't just understand it, you'll know exactly how to reclaim it, starting today. Introduction. The book is called Deep Work, written by computer scientist and author Cal Newport, a man who has spent his entire career studying something deceptively simple: why some people produce work of extraordinary value while surrounded by the exact same distractions as everyone else. Newport's promise is bold, almost provocative: the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task is becoming one of the rarest and most valuable skills in our economy, and almost nobody is training it. While the world chases hacks, hustle culture, and hyperconnectivity, Newport argues that the real advantage, the one that makes people rich, respected, and irreplaceable, is something almost embarrassingly simple: the discipline to go deep. This book didn't become influential because it offered another list of productivity tips. It became influential because it named something millions of people were feeling but couldn't articulate: the quiet dread that despite being more connected than any generation in history, we are producing less of what actually matters. Founders read it and restructured their entire calendars. Writers read it and finished books they'd been stuck on for years. Students read it and cut their study time in half while doubling their results. Newport gave a name to the invisible thief stealing their potential, and once people could see it, they could finally fight back. By the end of this journey, you will not just understand why focus has become rare, you will understand exactly how to rebuild it, rule by rule, until deep, valuable work becomes your natural state rather than a rare accident. This is not only a book summary. This is a transformation. Let's begin. Lesson 1: The Deep Work Hypothesis. Somewhere in the last 2 decades, the nature of valuable work quietly changed, and almost nobody noticed until it was too late. For most of human history, physical labor was the primary source of economic value. You built things with your hands, you moved things, you repeated tasks. But we no longer live in that world. Today, the people earning extraordinary outcomes, the entrepreneurs, engineers, writers, strategists, and creators shaping the modern economy, aren't succeeding because of what they can lift or repeat. They're succeeding because of what they can produce with their minds, in conditions of total, undistracted concentration. And yet here's the cruel irony: the modern workplace has become a machine almost perfectly engineered to prevent exactly that. Open floor plans, endless notifications, the unspoken expectation that you reply within minutes, not hours. We built a world that demands deeper thinking than ever before, and then filled it with more distraction than any generation has ever faced. Newport's central claim is what he calls the deep work hypothesis: the ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare at exactly the same moment it is becoming increasingly valuable. And because of this, the few who cultivate this skill, and make it the core of their working life, will thrive. He identifies 2 core abilities that will define success in the new economy: the ability to quickly master hard things, and the ability to produce at an elite level, in terms of both quality and speed. Both of these abilities depend on one shared foundation: depth. You cannot master anything complex through fragmented, interrupted attention. Mastery requires sustained, undivided focus, applied again and again, over time. Here is your first action, and it will feel almost too simple. Today, identify the one task in your work or life that would create the most value if done exceptionally well. Then ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you gave that task 60 minutes of completely undistracted attention? Not mostly undistracted. Completely. No phone. No tabs. No incoming messages. If you can't remember, that's not a personal failing, that's the current design of your life. And it's about to change. But here's the uncomfortable truth Newport reveals next: understanding that depth matters isn't enough. Because the moment you try to actually sit down and focus, you'll discover an invisible force sabotaging you before you even begin, something so subtle that most people never even notice it's happening. Lesson 2: The hidden cost of a quick glance. You sit down to write the report, plan the strategy, solve the hard problem, and then, almost automatically, your hand reaches for your phone. Just a glance. 10 seconds. You check a message, close the app, and return to your work. Except you don't really return. Not fully. Something stays behind. Newport points to research on something called attention residue, a phenomenon where, when you switch from one task to another, a portion of your attention remains stuck on the original task. It doesn't fully transfer. So when you check your phone for just 10 seconds, in the middle of deep work, you're not losing 10 seconds. You're contaminating the next 20 minutes of your focus with a lingering, half-present fog. This explains the exhausted but unproductive feeling perfectly. If you spend your day constantly switching, 5 minutes of work, a glance at Slack, back to work, a quick check of email, you are never actually operating at full cognitive capacity. You're perpetually working with a fraction of your available mental horsepower, because the rest of it is still tangled up in whatever you last glanced at. Newport's insight is blunt: even brief interruptions to check email or social media dramatically reduce your ability to perform demanding cognitive work, because your brain requires a runway to reach full depth, and every interruption forces you back to the start of that runway. The person who checks their phone 40 times a day isn't just losing the minutes spent looking at the screen. They are losing access to their own deepest thinking, permanently fragmented into pieces too small to build anything meaningful. This is why some of the most brilliant, hardworking people you know can spend 12 hours, working, and produce almost nothing of consequence, while someone else, working 4 focused hours, produces something extraordinary. It was never about hours. It was always about the unbroken nature of those hours. Your action here is to protect one block of time, even just 90 minutes, where your phone is in another room, notifications are off, and no quick glance is permitted. Not because the glance itself is dangerous, but because of what it drags behind it into the next 20 minutes of your focus. But this raises an uncomfortable question. If a single glance can fracture an hour of focus, how did we build entire careers around constant availability? The author discovered something even more surprising about why we do this to ourselves, and it has less to do with our jobs, and far more to do with our rhythms. Lesson 3: Rituals of the Irreplaceable. Most people treat deep work as something that should happen when they feel focused, a spontaneous state they hope will arrive if the conditions feel right. And because they wait for the right mood instead of building the right structure, deep work happens rarely, unpredictably, and almost never on demand. Willpower is not a bottomless resource. Newport draws on research showing that willpower depletes throughout the day. Every decision you make, every distraction you resist, every temptation you fight draws from the same shrinking reserve. If your plan for deep work depends on summoning enough willpower each time to fight through distraction from scratch, you will lose. Not sometimes. Consistently. Because you're relying on the least reliable resource you have. The solution, Newport argues, isn't more willpower, it's ritual. High performers don't rely on motivation to enter deep focus, they build rigid, repeatable routines that remove the need for decision-making entirely. Where will you work? For how long? What will you eliminate from the environment? What support do you need? Coffee, silence, a specific chair, a closed door. When the ritual is identical every time, your brain stops resisting and starts complying, because depth becomes a habit rather than a heroic act of self-control. Newport goes further, describing 4 disciplines elite performers use to structure not just individual sessions, but entire bodies of work, focusing on the wildly important goal rather than trying to improve everything at once, acting on lead measures, the specific, controllable behaviors that drive results, rather than lag measures you can't directly influence, keeping a visible scorecard so progress is felt and seen, and creating a rhythm of accountability that reviews progress on a consistent cadence. Together, these turn deep work from an occasional event into an engineered system. Design your own ritual today. Choose a specific location, a specific time window, and a specific starting cue you will use every time you begin deep work, even if the session is only 45 minutes. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is repetition, because repetition is what turns a fragile intention into an automatic behavior. However, this is only half of the story. Because even with the perfect ritual, there's a deeper obstacle waiting, one buried not in your calendar, but in your nervous system itself. Lesson 4. Training the muscle of focus. You sit down, ritual in place, phone away, door closed, and within minutes, your mind is somewhere else. Not because you lack discipline, but because your brain has been trained, deeply and repeatedly, to crave stimulation the instant boredom appears. Every time you reach for your phone during a moment of boredom, standing in line, waiting for a page to load, sitting in silence for even 10 seconds, you are training your brain to treat mild discomfort as something to be instantly escaped. Newport argues this rewiring is cumulative and severe. The more you practice distraction in moments of boredom, the weaker your capacity for sustained concentration becomes, even when you desperately want to focus. Your brain, quite literally, has practiced distraction far more than it has practiced depth. Newport's answer is what he calls productive meditation and the deliberate practice of embracing boredom. Focus is a skill, like a muscle, and it must be trained through structured discomfort, not indulged through constant stimulation. He suggests scheduling your distraction rather than banning it entirely, using specific blocks of internet use and specific blocks of internet abstinence, so your brain relearns that boredom is not an emergency requiring immediate rescue. He also points to deliberate practice research, the same body of work behind the famous 10,000 hours concept, showing that genuine skill development requires operating at the edge of your ability, in focused, effortful stretches, followed by real rest. Skimming, multitasking, and passive stimulation don't build capability. Only sustained struggle against a specific, hard problem does. Newport describes his own practice of what he calls productive meditation, taking a period of otherwise idle time, like a walk or a commute, and using it to think through a single, specific problem, rather than filling that time with a podcast or a phone screen. At first, the mind wanders relentlessly. But with repetition, the ability to hold a single thread of thought for extended periods strengthens, the same way a muscle strengthens under repeated, deliberate resistance. Elite chess players, elite musicians, elite athletes all describe the identical experience. The discomfort of sustained, effortful concentration is not a sign something is. For the next 7 days, choose one moment of natural boredom in your day, a commute, a line, a waiting room, and resist the urge to reach for stimulation. Let your mind be uncomfortable. Let it wander back to something meaningful you're working on. This single practice, repeated daily, will rebuild your capacity for depth faster than almost anything else in this video. Lesson 5: The Craftsman's Approach to Tools. Ask most professionals why they use social media, and they'll say something like, "It helps me network," or "I might miss something important." Notice the shape of that reasoning. it isn't about clear, measurable value. It's about the mere possibility of some benefit. Newport calls this the any benefit approach to tool selection, the belief that if a tool offers any conceivable advantage, no matter how small, that's justification enough to use it. This sounds reasonable, but it's a trap, because almost anything offers some possible benefit. Under this logic, you'd justify using every tool, every app, every platform simultaneously, and the cumulative cost of fractured attention across dozens of maybe useful tools becomes catastrophic, even if each individual tool seems harmless in isolation. Newport proposes something radically different, the craftsman approach. Instead of asking, does this tool offer any benefit at all, ask, does this tool provide a substantial benefit to the things I truly value, one that clearly outweighs its cost in time and attention. This is a fundamentally higher bar, and most tools, when measured against it honestly, don't clear it. This is why Newport controversially suggests that many professionals should quit social media entirely, or at least approach it with extreme selectivity, not out of moral judgment, but out of pure cost-benefit analysis. If a platform isn't producing a clear, substantial, measurable contribution to your core professional goals, its constant pull on your attention is a cost with no offsetting value, no matter how small it feels in the moment. Newport tells of professionals who deleted social media for 30 days, expecting withdrawal and lost opportunity, and instead found the opposite. Freed from the constant low-grade pull of checking, liking, and scrolling, they reported deeper concentration, more completed projects, and strikingly no meaningful professional cost. The opportunities they feared missing simply didn't materialize as significant, while the hours reclaimed compounded into real, visible output. The fear of missing out, it turned out, was almost entirely disconnected from any actual, measurable loss. Pick one digital tool you use out of habit rather than clear necessity. For 30 days, remove it entirely. Not reduce, remove. At the end, honestly assess, did anything of real value get worse? Or did you simply reclaim hours of attention you didn't know you were losing? But quitting distraction is only the defensive half of this battle. Because even if you eliminate every unnecessary tool, there's still an entire category of necessary seeming work quietly consuming your best hours, and Newport's next insight exposes exactly how to fight back. Lesson 6: Draining the Shallows. Not all shallow work can be eliminated. Emails need answering. Meetings need attending. Administrative tasks need completing. The danger isn't that shallow work exists, it's that, left unchecked, it silently expands to consume nearly all of your available time and energy, crowding out the deep work that actually creates value. Shallow work is seductive because it's easy to start, easy to finish, and immediately validating. A cleared inbox feels like an accomplishment. A full calendar feels like importance. But Newport warns that busyness has become a deeply flawed proxy for productivity in a world where the value of true output is hard to measure, so people, often unconsciously, substitute visible activity for actual value creation. The result is a professional culture that rewards the appearance of effort over the substance of impact. Newport's solution is what he calls draining the shallows, deliberately and aggressively minimizing shallow work so that deep work has room to breathe. This means scheduling every hour of your day in advance, including shallow tasks, so they're contained rather than allowed to sprawl. It means asking, for every task, how long would it take to train a smart recent graduate with no specialized training to complete this, and if the answer is, not long, recognizing that task as shallow, and either eliminating it, batching it, or delegating it. It means setting a hard stop to your workday, what Newport calls a shutdown ritual, that forces you to make deliberate choices about your time rather than letting the workday expand infinitely, absorbing your evenings and your energy along with it. Tonight, before you finish work, write down every task planned for tomorrow and assign each one a specific time block, including email, meetings, and admin work. Whatever remains unscheduled doesn't get to silently consume your best hours by default. You decide where your attention goes, instead of your inbox deciding for you. And now, having cleared the distractions, trained the muscle, and drained the shallows, there's one final principle, the one Newport saves for last, because it's the one that turns discipline into something almost transcendent. Lesson 7, the grand gesture. Even with perfect rituals and disciplined schedules, there are moments when a project demands more than routine, moments when incremental effort simply isn't enough to break through to the level of work that changes everything. Newport observes that our brains respond to psychological weight. A routine Tuesday afternoon carries no special gravity, and so our effort often matches that lack of gravity, steady, but unremarkable. When nothing about the moment feels significant, our minds rarely rise to meet a significant challenge. This is where Newport introduces what he calls the grand gesture, a radical change to your normal environment, paired with a significant investment of effort or money, specifically designed to elevate the perceived importance of a task and unlock a deeper level of focus and commitment than routine effort ever could. It sounds almost superstitious, but the psychology is real. When you signal to your own mind that this moment matters, through cost, novelty, or intensity, your brain responds by supplying a level of concentration that ordinary days simply don't summon. For your next significant project, engineer one grand gesture, a change of location, a meaningful investment of time or money, something that signals, undeniably, to your own mind, that this work matters enough to deserve your absolute best. You don't need a 5-star hotel. You need a deliberate, unmistakable break from the ordinary that tells your brain, this is not a normal day. Conclusion. Here is the transformation, laid bare. You began this video believing that busyness was the same thing as value, that answering fast, staying reachable, and filling every hour was the price of success in the modern world. You now understand the opposite is true. The ability to disappear into focused, undistracted, cognitively demanding work isn't a luxury reserved for a fortunate few. It's a skill, trainable, buildable, ritual by ritual, boundary by boundary, and it is quietly becoming the single most valuable capability in a world drowning in noise. You've seen that shallow work will always feel more urgent, and deep work will always feel more important, and that the gap between those two feelings is exactly where careers, ambitions, and legacies are either built or quietly lost. You understand that attention residue turns, just a quick glance, into a stolen hour, that rituals beat willpower every time, that boredom is a muscle you can train, that tools deserve a craftsman's scrutiny rather than a casual, why not, that shallow work will expand to fill every hour you don't deliberately protect, and that some moments deserve a grand, unmistakable gesture that tells your mind, this one matters. So here is your challenge. Not someday. Not when things calm down, today, choose one lesson from everything you just heard, one single ritual, one single boundary, one single hour of protected, undistracted focus, and apply it before you sleep tonight. Not because discipline is inspiring in the abstract, but because in 5 years, the distance between the person who kept scrolling and the person who kept building will not be measured in talent. It will be measured in hours of undistracted depth, quietly compounding while everyone else stayed busy. If this video changed how you see your own time, subscribe, because we distill one life-changing book like this every single week, turning the world's best ideas into a transformation you can actually use. And here is the idea I want you to carry with you long after this video ends: the world will always be loud enough to keep you shallow. It will never stop offering you an easier, more comfortable, more validating way to avoid the harder work that actually matters. The question was never whether the distractions would come. They always will. The only question that matters is whether you will build a life strong enough, structured enough, and deliberate enough to say no to them, again, and again, and again, until depth becomes not something you fight for, but simply who you are.